Hey, y'all, I'm Shane Sams, the host of the Membership Masters podcast. I'm a location independent, self-employed online entrepreneur, and I make my entire living with membership sites online. And I'm here today to help you start, build, and grow a membership business of your very own. I do that by interviewing some of the best online entrepreneurs on the planet Earth, some of the best marketers, creators, and content publishers anywhere online, so that you can learn all the best practices for not only building your online business, but marketing it and getting it out there as well. I'm super excited about today's guest. His name is Azul Terronez. He's one of my great friends in the online world, and he really is the book whisperer to the stars. I mean, this guy knows how to create and get books into the marketplace, out to readers, so that they can help you grow your business. Azul has coached some of the biggest authors, biggest podcasters, biggest entrepreneurs anywhere, and he has helped them turn their books into online marketing machines. Now, if you're anything like me, you're probably a little intimidated about writing a book. I've been trying to write a book now for a few months, and man, it is a process. Azul is going to help us simplify the process and show you not only how you can get your book out faster, but why it doesn't need to be as long as you think it does. Azul is going to tell us why we should write books, how we should get them done fast, when we should launch them, and exactly how we can get people from the book to our courses and memberships and products online. I know you are going to learn a lot from my conversation with Azul today about writing a book and using that book to grow your membership site. So if you're ready to become a membership master today, let's get started. Welcome to the Membership Masters podcast, brought to you by membershipmasters.com. This is the podcast where we teach you how to get and keep more members every single month. I've helped thousands of people start, build, and grow memberships, and I interview some of the biggest membership owners anywhere online. My goal is to help you build $1 million membership of your own. Brick by brick, let's do it together. Come on. 3, 2, 1. Azul, my brother, what is going on, man?
Well, you know what's going on, Shane. Making the world a different place. Good to see you.
That's right, man. A better place. A better place, even. That's what we're all in this for, right?
That's right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Man. How you guys holding up down there in Texas? Everything, the lockdown's starting to free up a little bit, and things are starting to move toward normal. They are up here a little bit.
They are a little bit. Though this new normal, it just is what it is. You know, like the new shift for us is that we went from living out of our suitcase, traveling around the world, to being in a stationary place in Austin, which that's new. But it's been kind of cool. Like, we haven't owned a car in 5 years, like, really. So that's right. Kind of new.
You had you kind of had like the most dramatic shift, because when there's no travel, you literally had to change your whole lifestyle, like, completely, for a while.
Totally. I didn't even have furniture. I didn't have anything more than would fit in a carry-on bag. So life shift, but in a good way. It's all good.
We went to Mexico. Me and Jocelyn went to Mexico like about a month ago. So
yeah,
it was interesting traveling overseas and talking to. It was interesting hearing how another country's people were dealing with the pandemic and everything. Because their health system is not like ours. So like they were really hardcore prevention, really hardcore, like even more than we are here.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating. And I was glad I got back in the country before they passed that thing. You had to take a test to get back in. So,
what I'm saying? You've had your fair share of taking tests.
Now you specialize in helping authors create their book and get them out to market, right?
Right.
Has all of this changed the book industry at all? Has anything shifted in the book industry? Like, because I mean, bookstores, of course, have been closed. Now they're open again, some of them, but I'm sure many closed down. And but Amazon's on fire at the same time. So has anything shifted in the book industry since 2020?
I think people are looking for stories and creators and leaders more than ever.
Ooh.
I think there are more agents have reached out to me saying, do you have anybody that we could talk to, like asking me for my client roster. I'm like, oh, that's interesting that you're now reaching out to me. This is a reverse story where I'd like, agent wouldn't take my call, but now they're looking for me because they used to get a lot of connections by being in person and this. So internet marketing or making connections online is new for those types of people. They don't participate on online marketing. They don't have podcasts to create funnels. They were used to something else. So the book is shifting. The world is shifting because everyone is now familiar with Zoom, familiar with online shopping, familiar with getting things, um, purchasing from Amazon, even
Yeah.
things they used to do in the stores because it feels safer, more comforting in there. So I think that this time is the best time to stand out because when the world shifts and things open up, people are going to be wanting to know who are the leaders. They're going to step into the world and what are their stories, because being newsworthy is a different thing than it used to be.
Yeah.
Like there's so much chatter out there. So being newsworthy, you have to be somebody that has some unique perspective. So I think it's only growing. It's one of the best times, I think, in the world to be a author because of the you could be on a show in New York where before you had to live in that place and be ready to go online in their studios. Now they're willing to let you be on a prime spot in big city New York, Chicago as an author at home, and you don't have to live there or be in that stage and get on a plane and get there because the world shifted. So there's more opportunity for the small guy to get in front of big audiences than there ever has been before.
It's what I'm learning is, and because you've been like hammering me about it for a while now, like write your book, finish your book, right? We'll talk more about that. I do notice that it is the great differentiator, like having a book in your marketing, and that's why I want to get this thing done, because having a book in your marketing, no one can compete with it. Like you either put the time in to do it, and you had a story worth telling, or you didn't, right?
Yeah.
And even sometimes, like it's funny, like I don't want to downgrade anybody's story, but sometimes just putting the work in can even elevate the story. So everything around it is elevated just because you put the time and marketing. So do you find that that's a big difference with your authors that work with you? Like they have the differentiator. I mean, if it comes down to, it's like a job resume. If you're going to hire two speakers, who's got the book? If you're going to go with one entrepreneur or another, well, who's got a book? Like, do you find that?
I definitely find that for people who are trying to build something bigger than what they already have. Because unlike other mediums, you can grow attention and grow an audience, but influence and authority is hard to say to traditional world or people who don't know you yet that you're important because you're a podcaster or a YouTuber. That yet hasn't solidified as much as I'm an author, because being an author has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. People know what it is. You don't have to explain it. People are still in awe of someone who's written a book. Wow, you're an author. That's pretty amazing. And it's a long-term commitment to something you believe in. Hey, I don't like my podcast. I can pull it down. I can pull down my webpage. Once you put a book in the world, it is. You can't retrieve it. So there's more of a permanency and a clarity about what you say matters. Especially in these days and age, you have to be really clearly unique and say a message that you're going to stay true to for the long haul. Not because today you're selling this widget and tomorrow you'll sell something else. In a book, they're going to discover that you are the guy who has 101 Twitter secrets, and then next year you're somebody else and you try to put that book out. They're going to catch on that you're not speaking from the heart about who you really are and what you really believe. And that's the hardest part about a book. It's not content we're missing. Like, we have so much content. Consumers aren't wanting more content. What they're wanting, a more unique perspective on that content and who they're going to follow and pay attention to. It's not the thing that people should pay attention to. So a lot of authors think, wow, if I really focus on this, getting the content right, then the book will be good. And I tell people, look, when I was a kid, I got a magnifying glass and a science kit. And it was really cool because I could see things. But then I realized very quickly you could burn your friend's leg,
Right.
which was even cooler, or burn an ant. I'm sorry to say, I probably also karma for that. And also I could burn a leaf and have it ignite. It was the coolest thing, that the sunshine that normally would just warm your hand with this focus lens could ignite. And I think so many people think of what they're writing as important, the sunshine, but we all have sunshine. The difference is if they focus on the lens, which is them, who they are, how they see the world, that's how they get something to ignite. That's how they get something to change. And most people worry about content, and that's not the thing they should worry about. It's the who are they in the world that matters.
Yeah, you just actually said something. I think you've uncovered an internal obstacle in my mindset here, Azul, as we've been talking here, because like I tell all of our stories and I teach. Like, we were figuring out the other day how much content we have inside the community because we're revamping everything a little bit. We're like reorganizing the shelves right now, right? Our whole team is involved in this. It's a massive project because we have over 1,000 YouTube videos of Q&A. These are all individual questions that I've answered over the years. We've got hundreds of podcasts, dozens of courses. I mean, it's like thousands of hours of content, right? And and I know, like, even though you have all this content, the themes that you talk about are the same. Like when I go on interviews, I tell the stories, right? I tell the stories. They ask me, how did you get started? What happened? How did it do? You tell the story over and over. Done that hundreds of times. The questions you get asked, they're thematically, categorically about the same. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to it, but come on, 80% of it is X, Y, or Z, right? So you say the same things over and over again. And I'm sitting here like, why would I not just write these in the book? What is my holdup sometimes when I sit down and I get that writer's block and I'm like, I've got a great story. I tell it all the time. People always ask me about it, but I'm like, oh, I get it now, because it's the permanent version of the story. It's the version of this. It's like the scripture version of the story, right? It's not there's no paraphrasing anymore. And sometimes you'll go on a podcast that are on stage and they'll be like, you got 5 minutes. And then sometimes you got 50 minutes. So you got the 5-minute version, you got the 15-minute version, you got the 50-minute version. The book is the version. And I think that might be like the fear here in me is like, oh my gosh, I have to write the permanent version. This is Baby Bear's porridge. It's got to be just right. You know what I'm saying?
You hit it right on the nail on the head, because we're afraid that maybe I could do it just a little bit better. So what if I had decided I'm going to change it again? And I tell people, I hope you do. I hope you do clarify that story. I hope it does get better. But most people don't understand you're changing as a person every day. And the thing you write today won't be who you are 2 years from now, but hopefully you put enough of you in it that who you are is the same. And most people try to put themselves distance from their content so that they don't have to say, well, but maybe that's not who I'll be later on. And so finding your unique values, that's what makes you the person to tell that story. People know, that I'm a book coach, that I've helped lots of really great people, but more importantly, I want them to remember that I'm this kid that couldn't read at 3rd grade, was dyslexic, flunked freshman English at UCLA, and eventually became an English teacher, not because I'm good at English, because I'm really good at seeing stories, because when everyone else was focusing on the words, I was trying to focus on what's the deeper story here, because that's what I could do. So my gift, my vulnerability in the past was, I wasn't really a great English teacher, but I was really good at finding the stories in young people. And that's where I really understood how important people's stories is versus just what they know, because school is all about what you know. And in fact, we're not looking for what people know. It's ironic. We want their confidence. We want their perspective, because if we wanted knowledge, we'd go dumpster dive at the end of a college school year in the library and get all those textbooks and go consume them. But we don't. That's not what we do, right? And we're really trained to think differently about books. But when I read a book, I want to be inspired to believe it's possible. I want to know why I should pay attention to this person and trust them and go find out more about them. I don't need to know the stuff. And that's transactional. I'm not saying I don't look up how to fix my, my stripped nail or whatever. Like, I want to figure out how to do things, but books that change people's lives are usually small ideas that most people missed, that you just pointed out and go, you know what? Have you noticed this? And someone goes, whoa, I've seen that, but I just never noticed it in that way. That's what shifts people, those smaller things. It's not huge things. And I think that's what people get afraid of. I'm afraid if I don't put all of it in here, I'll make an error, or people will think I'm not good enough, or it's not enough. And that's where we get stuck in our head and we can't finish a book because we're never done, right? We're never done baking.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the work is never done. But like it's just it's a snapshot of the story that led to that point is really what the book is,
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that people, so a lot of people I know that have membership sites and have online businesses, this seems like a common pattern. Like, you get something to stick in the world online, right? It creates income and revenue, and all of a sudden this new life is possible that you never even dreamed you could achieve. You realize you can actually reach out and impact people all over the world through the internet, right? And this seems like a natural progression of they go toward a book. Like, the book is like the next thing. It's like there's always like a book to bridge you to the next level, it seems like, in your head. Yeah. Do you find that the mistake people make then is they go straight to what they know? Like, my gut instinct that I always go back and forth with is I know how powerful our story is, but I also know how powerful what I teach is. Like, I know I've seen people's lives. I've seen family trees and generational wealth created through our community. right? So
Right.
my gut instinct is like, all right, I'm going to tell them all about the memberships, and I'm going to tell them all about what I teach, and I'm going to go, oh, that's the book I got to write first, right? But do you
Right.
find that that's actually the mistake that people make, because it is so transactional and things change, and you can find that stuff, in different ways in different places? Is it better to say, well, wait a minute, what makes people want to start the membership? That's the more important story than how to actually do it.
Yeah. I that's a great question. Um, there is a little bit of difference, transactional books versus transformational books. And that depends on what your person needs. Do they need a transformation to do the thing you're asking them to do? Do they
Mm,
need to have a shift in their mindset first to be able to do all the how to? Because if they just needed how to, why haven't they done it already? So you got to think about that. The transactional books are really useful. Like I mentioned, like the 101 Twitter secrets. That's a book that's useful for someone who's working on Twitter. But someone who doesn't believe that's going to change their life, they don't have that shift. So you kind of have to know your ideal reader. Like, who is my ideal reader for this? Who would I want to draw into my world? Whose
mm,
attention do I want? So the first question I ask authors is, what do you want this to do for you, this book? And a lot of them get distracted and say, well, I really want to focus on helping these people. I go, yeah, but what do you want to do for you? Because if you're not clear, you could write two different books that could have different outcomes. So if you want to be hired by corporate entities and speak on stages and be a consultant, then that's a different book to write, right?
mm.
But if you're trying to impact a community and draw people into a funnel and want people to be inspired to take action, then that's a different book. So you just got to be clear. And if you try to merge the books, that's when it gets confusing for the reader, because like, is this for me? Because it sounds like you're talking to them and not to me. So I think that's one thing, clarity. Who are you speaking to and what do you want it to do for you? If you want it to be an amazing funnel for your programs, then write a book to that ideal person who steps up and goes, what do you do again? And why? So know that, and then you'll know what book to write. Because if not, you'll try to write a book for everyone, and that gets really distracting. So just be clear, because sometimes, or most of the time, I notice that people are writing a book with another book hanging on its heels. Like they're afraid that they'll miss an opportunity. And I always say it's just like bowling. I spent a lot of time in a bowling alley when I was a kid. In a small town, that's what you do when it's cold. Um,
Yeah,
but
you go bowling. Exactly,
you go
I did
bowling.
too.
But the pin that you knocked down, but there was another pin, sleeper pin right behind it. That's the pin that is the book trying to be born. Like, you can't stuff two books into one, but oftentimes authors do, and it confuses the reader, and the outcomes don't come out the way you expect. So just be clear about that. And then once you are, you're like, oh, this needs to be a book about membership and how memberships changed my life, because that's who I'm focusing on. And that's what I wanted to do for our business, be the lead magnet, the thing that draws more people to us. If it's something else, then be clear about that. That's how the book will shift, by getting clarity early on.
Yeah, and another thing too, we always say this to people, but sometimes it doesn't stick. I think because the concept of writing a book feels overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Because I think when we all think of books, we think of things like novels and Bibles and massive 400 to 1,000 word or page tomes that are sitting, the encyclopedias we grew up with, whatever. So like just when you say, I want to write a book, it's like, oh man, what am I getting myself into? But the concept of what we do, like for products, is the same. Like, it's not like you're only going to write one book. You can still write the other books. It's like the bowling pins, right? You set one down, then you set two more down. You can always do more later, and that's the line, right? Is figuring out which one to do first.
Right. And that's the one you have to choose on. That's really, actually, it's quite terrifying to choose. Like, well, I don't want to make a mistake and choose the wrong one for now. It's my first book. I'm like, just treat the first book like the first anything. It's never going to be as good as the last thing you did. Like, you can't expect it to be perfect. And if you do, you'll never write it. And that's the thing most authors have to get over. Whether they have a contract with Penguin or Random House, where I coach those people who already have a big deal and they're terrified they're going to mess up, or people who are publishing on their own and trying to figure out what's the right thing to say. The biggest deterrent to books being completed isn't the fact that they don't have a good idea or even their ability to write. It's the fact that they're afraid of the outcome after it's written, and they're worried about it. So I think, 99% of people who have a book in their head never actually finish it because they're afraid that they're going to mess up somehow, or it won't be good enough, or won't be the right book, or I just need a little more time. And that's the thing for leaders. And a lot of books you probably love and read by big popular leaders probably weren't written by them. They probably were extracted by them. They're the author of the book, their names on it. But the act of writing it's like a creative process that takes a lot of courage. So you don't need a lot of content. You need courage and excess. I can help anybody write a book about anything, But if they don't have the courage to show up, then it won't matter what it is or how much knowledge they have. They'll just, write a book that doesn't feel like it's them, and they'll never want to share it because they're terrified that it's not them.
Yeah, I get it. So let's talk about this in the terms of entrepreneurship, okay?
Great.
Because to me, I think there's definitely people who are like, I need to write this book just because I got something to say and I need to say it. And I don't care what happens to it, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a very do something for an outcome kind of person. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like that. I want to write this book. Let's say I want to write a book for one of two reasons. I either want to write a book because I need to inspire someone to go to the next step, or I need to actually give them the thing to teach them the next step to get them moving. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like if my purpose is that I need to get this in your hands, I need you to do it so that you can move to a next step. I think that's kind of where I'm floating around, is what these books, any book I write, would do. Right. It's getting someone to their next step. Is there a link that we need to look for in books like this? Like if someone's listening to this, they're like, man, I know a book would blow up my marketing leads or whatever. Like, do I need to stay within a certain parameter? Are there guidelines for that? Or is it like, how long does the book take to tell the story? Like, what do you do when you look at length in the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. Books don't need to be as long as you think, for one. They only need to be as long as it would be to tell the story that gets that person to take the action you want them to take at the end. Right? Books are this simple. What's the core message that you have for your readers? And if you get clear about that, then you say, what's the outcome for that reader? What's the happy, joyful, wonderful outcome that reader gets? And then you figure out, well, where are they starting? They're stuck in their job. They're still having to work an extra job. Like whatever it is, their story, who they are, and what would be great if by the end they got there. And most people expect too much of those readers. So you got to figure out, well, I'm only one thing to make the decision. I can do it. And that book is going to take the whole time, is going to get them from point A to point B. You don't want to give them too much because you're asking them to make a shift in some way. Most people write a book, put too much in it. The reader's not ready to make all those shifts you're asking them. They don't need all the how-to. That's your course, your programs, right? You're just trying to persuade them of some smaller step, the next step towards you. So what I tell people is, like, first figure out where they are when they join you. Where do you want them to get by the end of the journey? Because the journey can be done in a talk shorter than it is in a book, right?
Yeah.
I can spend more time in a book, but if I only have an hour on a stage, man, I'm gonna get there a lot quicker. Well, books gives you a lot more time, but you still don't want to fill them with too much how. Books that are really successful for online entrepreneurs or business owners is tell a little bit about why you're their guide. You're the right person. What is this thing you're teaching them, and why does it matter? Then you teach them a little bit about the what or the how. Like, don't tell them how. Most people start jumping in right into how. They need more of the what and why. And maybe 20% of the book needs to be how. Just enough so they can maybe get a win. Just enough so they can maybe take a step forward. And I made this mistake early on, even in teaching people, is that I would try to give them all this stuff, how to write a book. And they're like, but I don't even know what idea to pick. And I'd be like, well, just pick one. They're like, but that sounds easy.
That never works. I say that to people about memberships all the time. I'm like, I just pick one. We'll see what happens. We'll come back if it doesn't work.
But there's a lot of convincing and persuasion that goes that they can have the confidence that they can do it, because they don't believe it for a long time, even reading your story, that they can. So that's, I think entrepreneurs need to realize you need them just to get to the place where they're ready to say, okay, I'm ready to learn now. I'm ready to take this step now, whatever that step is for you. If that is like join your free offer, like Pat's book here, Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income, Will It Fly? The first book he wrote was like this. He wanted to write this huge online encyclopedia for everything online, which he has the skill and knowledge to. But the problem is that was too much. 70% of his listeners had never made more than $500 online ever.
Yeah.
So to get them to do all those advanced strategies, SEOs, was not very useful. So all he wanted to get them to do in Will It Fly was to get them to believe that they could get their idea, to take action, and start to make some money online. And it was purpose really for him was to get people to opt into his free course, because he was moving from being an affiliate marketer to being a course creator. That's what he wanted. If he can get enough people to get into his free course, then maybe they would start to buy from courses he created. So that was what Will It Fly was about. It was all about getting them confident that they could take the action to start building their thing. And not a ton of how. The how was take this free course to get in, right? Because he wanted them to start taking action and get some wins under his belt. So I think I think Pat's a good example of a book whose job was to get them to take action in his community, and start becoming people that are willing to learn from him and then eventually buy from him.
Yeah. That's interesting you said that, because we had a meeting with this company we're working with for live events recently, and they were asking us, we were looking at the 2-day journey that the people would take to get to the place where they would be like, okay, I'm ready to do this, right? And it's like, you go 2 days, you speak like a couple hours a day, and you do some workshopping and you do some things like that. And the guy asked me a very simple question: where do you have to get people? If you had an hour, 2 hours with them, where do they have to get to? What are the 2 things you got to do to make them take their next step? And we figured out, like, oh, well, the first thing is they have to believe real people can do this, because I think a lot of entrepreneurship, you've got the Gary V's running around and everybody thinks certain people are special, and you've got Tony Robbins on stage and well, I'm not 6'5" and whatever,
Right.
they believe it's not possible for them. But me and Jocelyn are just 2 people from Kentucky. I mean, we were school teachers, right? I mean, it's not like we're out there with a Nobel Peace Prize around our neck launching products, right?
Right.
And so that's the first step that we always do in our marketing, is just get them to see that you can do it, and maybe give them some other examples to prove it wasn't just you, it wasn't a fluke, right?
Right.
And at that point, then it becomes, well, now let's just make them believe in their idea, right? Because everybody has a good idea. But when you say it that simple, that doesn't feel like it could fit in a book, like it does, like, because we think a book's got to be this grand epic, right? But when you say it like that, like, I just have to tell them the story that gets them to the next step wherever they are. But you got to know that step, man. If you're an entrepreneur, like, you've got to know, do I want them to go down this rabbit hole, or do I want them to go down this rabbit hole? And I can't get them to try to go down 3 rabbit holes at the same time. If I do that, they're going to get so overwhelmed, they're never going to buy the book or anything in the book that it sells, basically.
Right. You can't say, you know what you could do. If you say that, you've lost them. You got to tell them, this is what you should do. This one specific thing. Shift these things in your life will allow you to do this. And most books, authors who are new, try to write too much into the book. And really, I say really great books are lost in words. So many words, you can lose people. Like, think of all the books you bought with the intention to read it. And you started reading it, and you kind of got lost in I'm kind of lost here. And then you don't do any action. You don't take it. You don't even finish the book. Most books don't get finished. Here's the thing. This is the thing authors probably don't want to hear, but most books don't get finished. But the book is just the conversation you would have with them if you can be with them. So if you can get them to come with you and carry your message forward, and then you have a book that's worthy. Because a book's only valuable if it lives outside of the pages. It's not valuable on the page, right? So books are more powerful if someone talks about them than they are if they read them. Seth Godin is a great example of this. When he writes a book called, All Marketers are Liars, it's easy to talk about. He's writing about something specific. If you're able to talk about a book, the small idea, away from the book without having to go look it up and go, what did you learn? And go, oh, let me think about it real quick. I don't really know. If they can't say what they know, what they got from it right away, then it's too complicated. It's too much. And so you end up having to tell lots of stories, examples, your stories, other people's, and say things over and over. So at the end, they're not confused about what the core message was. The message is, hey, ordinary people, just like you and me, can start a business, get themselves into some wealthy position, and actually make a living working from home and loving their family. If that's the simple message, don't deviate it from, don't put anything else that would get them away from that message. So at the end, they're saying, oh my God, I really figured out I can actually make money working from home and replace this thing so my wife can actually stay home. This is what I need. It has to keep resounding so strong that when they say, man, dude, you look like you're happy. You look like you got a new truck. I'm like, yeah, man, I read this book. It changed my life. That's what you want. Not this is the steps in the book. That's not important.
Right. Well, let me break down the 14 steps to success that I've written down here. I was sitting here thinking while you said that, of books that have really impacted me. They're all kind of short. Like Profit First by Mike Michalowicz is short. It's really short. It's not a long book, you know? But like, it's one of the few, I was sitting there, what books have I actually finished? That's one of them, because I could get it. It was pretty simple. There was 4 categories with percentages out of 100. This is not hard, guys. Right. And it was his basically story, how he figured it out, and another book that I finished of Mike's was, The Pumpkin Plan. Have you read that book? That's a great book. If you've never read that book, but it's super short. I read that in a day, and I actually went out and implemented it. Right. But then I think of other books like that. What is it? Tim Ferriss's Tools of the Titans. I have it. I've never even opened it. I bought it just because he launched it and whatever. Even the 4 Hour Work Week, I read one chapter and it kind of gave me an idea and I was out, right?
Yeah.
Because it was just too long to even finish. And there was too many ideas, too many things in it for me.
Yeah. See, you're experiencing exactly what I tell people. Like they think that, well, but I want to write like the 4 Hour Work Week. I'm like, do you really? Is that what you really want? Or is that just
Are you
the
sure
idea?
about that?
Because the books that get your ideal reader to take the action you want are the right books. That book was written for you. Those books are written for someone just like you and just like me. And we read and we take action. Well, if that's the reader you're focusing on, then focus on them. Malcolm Gladwell has a different audience.
Yeah.
He wants academics. He wants different people to use data in a different way. He has a different purpose for writing longer books with deeper intellectual themes. He's not trying to build entrepreneurs or build this, but you are. So these are busy people who want to take an idea and believe it's possible and then take some small action and gives them a win. Those books don't need to be epic. They need to be as long as they need to be to get them to say, okay, I think I'm ready. Yeah. And I think that's the difference in the publishing industry is that the way we consume has also changed. Like we want quick understanding. We can look things up. We don't need a long story to tell us this. We want to know, emotionally why this is going to work more than we want factual belief. Not that we shouldn't put facts or that we shouldn't have data or any statistics or anything like that. But I think people, for entrepreneur books you're writing, should really help people get a quick win. And the quick win might be that they believe they can do it.
Yeah, man. The Gladwell books too, like it's almost like a status thing to have those books sitting on your shelf, because you're like, look how smart I am. I've got all the collection there, outliers and all this stuff and whatever, and you just stack them up and it's like, it's the backdrop on your podcast. You have all the books. Look at all my books I've never read behind me. Right. But
no,
really,
exactly right.
But us, we're trying to think like a funnel. Like that's probably leads me to my next question. How do we, okay, so I'm going to write this book. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, whatever it takes, but I'm going to get people to the end. Now, any lead source in any online business, like you've got to be able to get people to move from the lead source to the actual thing, to the product, to the whatever. So how do you move people from a book? Like I get this book, you get the story, you're inspired. Great. I'm not going to leave it to chance that you're just going to go do all the research and find me. Right. Is it then like throughout the book and strategically, do we use a chapter of the book at the end to push people to the next step? Like, how do you get people from the book into the course? Like, I know that my mission is to get people in the Flipped Lifestyle community, because when you start the Flipped Lifestyle Blueprint, lives start changing, right? Yeah. That's where the rubber meets the road, and inspiration is a part of that, but we got to do the work, right?
Yeah.
So how do we move people from a book into our program, into our membership, into that next step?
Train them throughout the book if that's your goal, that you're going to be teaching them how to get this input, this advice, and get them onto your list as quickly as you can. If you have something supplemental to offer them, give it to them in the very beginning. If you're like, hey, unlike most people, I'm giving away the audiobook for free. Go here, log in, put in your name and email. I'll send you the audiobook free. You don't even have to pay for it. Man, people are going to go, right? If you're going to have them get a free download, this blueprint. So you know what? This has changed people. I have people who had made this 6 figures or whatever it is, taking this blueprint alone. Go get it now. Because in this chapter, I'm going to talk to you about how this really has changed Marcus's and Janelle's life. Let me tell you about them. So just constantly train them to take action towards coming to you, reference things. Now, you don't want a book. People will get annoyed if they're reading a book and it's nothing but links and downloads, but just make the message consistently that you're going to over deliver, you're going to delight them in some way, to give them something outside of the book that's even better than the book, that's going to help them. So I'd say be strategic write the content and then figure out where's the best way for me to call them out of the book. And the great thing about platforms like Kindle is that you can put links directly in your book and they can leap from their book on their phone, go opt in and come right back to the book. Right. So it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's a tool for marketers everyone should use. So you want to give them that opportunity. In the beginning of a Kindle book, when you go on Amazon, you can preview books.
Yeah.
The first several pages. Well, the first several pages you can preview for free. Put your opt-in there. Even if they don't buy your book, they'll click the link, opt in, and get the audiobook for free and don't have to buy it. They're already on your list. And then you're looking for them to come into your world. So I would say be strategic. Don't overwhelm them, but be strategic about when it's the most value for them to take an action. No one needs charts and graphs, but people do need a tool. People who are your ideal reader do want something if they're right to take that action. Now, just like any other marketing, there's only a certain number of people going to do it, but the right people who do it, they're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the idea of too, like sometimes I'll get really into a book and like someone's telling a great story. I mean, they're spinning the yarn, baby. And then
Yeah.
like the end of the chapter, there's a big giant, go here to get this download, to get this thing. And like, dude, you should have just, I was hooked on turning the page and you broke it, you know? And like, you got to be careful not to do it. You don't just do it every chapter because somebody else did it every chapter. There's places where it makes sense for the call to action to kind of appear, you know?
Make it so compelling and so much better than anybody else has done for them. And then like, just think of, I say the audiobook because it does take a lot to produce and time to record, but think of that. If you're giving away something so valuable, like, why wouldn't I get the free audio? I'll finish it here.
Yeah.
Well, you've already brought them into your world. They're already, but you know, so my thing is if what you give away for free is way more valuable, somebody would you pay for it, then that's when you know it should go in the book. If it's just you trying to get them on your list without giving away something valuable, don't do it because it'll become annoying and they'll close the book.
It almost sounds like too, like this is probably a good way to kind of move toward the conclusion here. If you're going to write, don't just write a book because your favorite influencer or your friends told you to write a book, but like the story is really, really super important. But it seems like the goal is the most important thing in writing the book. Like that's really what's going to make you write the book is you understand what you want the reader to do at the end of it. Because how could you know where to finish? How could you know what to offer? How could you do anything until you actually understand the goal like of the book, right?
That's right.
So you would say that, I mean, like pick what you want them to do and work backwards from that. And you're going to be able to write the book a lot easier.
Right. And what you want it to do for you. And if it's to get people to buy your programs, then figure out how do I write a book that's compelling for the right person to enter my world, that if I had 10,000 more of them would be even better. Then write that book. You know, you only need the right people. This is a way to actually filter out people and get the right people on your list. Because, you know, getting people on your list is one thing. Getting the right people is even harder. So you want the book to work hard for you because people that do like books, who don't listen to podcasts, who don't read things online, believe books way more, they're going to be on your list paying attention. They're going to let it sit on their desk. You could delete a website, you could forget an email, but you get a book on your desk or on your Kindle, you're going to pay attention to it way more because it's just in your face so much. And that's why people still do physical books because, you know, you might give away a book. You know, you figure, what's the cost of me giving away a book? What's the cost for a lead? That's why people do free plus shipping, because you're like, well, if it costs me $7 to do this and $3 to acquire them, but if they rarely will throw away a book. People, it's really hard. So people use these strategies to give at a conference, and every chair you go to speak, your book's there. Man, so it costs you money, but those people are carrying that book out there. They're throwing away the swag bag maybe, but your book's going with them. So there's just all these strategic thinking to do when you're using a book as leverage towards to get them into your world, to fall in love with you.
This might be a biased question. I lied. I'm going to ask you one more question. This might be a biased question, but for many people, there's only so many things you can do in a day, right? There's only so many, even in my business. I mean, I've got full-time people, like I got editors, I got executive assistants, I got customer service, I got whatever, right? Even with us, you still have to say, wow, yeah, but are we going to work on this project, or are we going to work on this project, or are we going to work on the book? Is there a when someone should write a book, do you think? Like, because it is going to take time, and it is going to take effort, and it is going to take energy away from other things. Is this something a beginner should do, or is it someone with an audience should do, or do you find there's a good win, or is it just kind of like it depends on the desires of the person writing the book?
It depends on the purpose. So let me give you my example as somebody who wrote a book and was known by no one. So I really wanted to leave teaching, but I couldn't make, unlike you, I was not able to make online stuff work. I mean, I owned so many domains and tried, different affiliate marketing. I just couldn't figure out the formula. So I needed a mentor. It's like, I got to write a book that helps me figure out, how do I find the right mentor that will help me get to where I see myself being and where I'm at now. So I wrote the book, The Art of Apprenticeship, for my own purposes, to see if I believed in this idea of service, that if you serve a master, someone who has what you want, and you want to learn from them, you'll be happy cleaning up the scraps of metal at the end of the workday, maybe getting to make something here and there with those scraps. And over time, you'll learn as an apprentice would learn. That was my premise. And if I believe that, if I could just find the right mentor, I'll get there. And I wanted to do that. And so I wrote that book with that purpose. I'm going to use this book to find leverage to get a mentor. And it'll give me instant authority, because books do that. And so going to Pat Flynn and Chris Ducker's one-day event and saying, I don't have a business, but I wrote a book about this idea of art of apprenticeship. Well, from there, it gave me instant authority that I already wrote a book. They wanted me to help them write a book, and the idea was interesting to them. And it did what it said. Here it is 6 years later. Pat Flynn is still Steve and our mentor, and it worked. The principles worked. It did what I wanted it to do. And so, what's the intent and purpose? Someone who had no audience, no connections, not even a business, used it to leverage now being able to have this wonderful life. But be clear about what you want it to do, and don't expect it to do more than that. I didn't think it was going to create an online funnel because I didn't have a business idea. But if you do have one, it can be an amazing funnel because books are long living. Like, they last forever. They don't break like certain parts of the internet can, right?
Yeah.
So they are credibility for stages. They do so much more than just a product you put together. So you got to really think, is this a part of my strategic plan to get something that I don't currently have? Or could I do this so that it eliminates these other things that I'm doing currently? Then that's how you decide, is that strategic? Because if it's just one more thing, then it's going to be a distraction. But if it's like, if we did this, we can eliminate these 6 or 7 things we're doing, then it's worthwhile.
Yeah, and it becomes evergreen. I think that's one of the strongest arguments I've heard for the book. Yes, it is going to take up time in the beginning, but this is invested time. I mean, this is a thing that's going to be there. Like when you write and release the book, and I never thought about that before. You can't call it back. That's awesome, because it's that once it's in the world, that's sitting on someone's desk, and you can't go get them. You know, you can't like delete it from a server, but like when you put the time in, now you're like, okay, the next 10, 20 years, we can use this in different ways. It's over. Like, now we're just promoting at that point.
Yeah.
And
then it's passive income as well. It's also passive income. And if you build it as a tool for your business, then it's not just passive income. It's a stream that keeps on going, right? So social posts, you might spend a lot of time crafting, or a webinar, it deteriorates over time because it's not as useful. But a book can stay useful for a long period of time.
Yeah. Do you? I lied again. I got one more question. Then I'm seriously going to wrap this up. But I just love talking to Azul, so I'm going to keep talking to him. Do you think what's the self-publishing versus the publishing route? I know this is the chicken egg. There's lots of that in it. But for entrepreneurs, most people I see are definitely going that self-publishing route because they have control over the asset, total control over it. I know some people are doing it to springboard them, like to get on bigger stages, to get in lists and all those things. But do you find that the shift is, man, when you self-publish, you just got this thing that you can use everywhere? Or is it not a plus or minus? It's just what you want to do with the book?
I think it can be plus or minus. So I help lots of people with big book deals. There are things that you get limited to. You be really cautious of signing any contract until you're clear what you're giving up. You may be signing and giving away your audiobook rights and not even knowing it. You may be signing away your foreign rights and not know it. So you got to be thoughtful. Like, there's things you can give up in signing a contract with traditional publishers. And you might be lured by the idea of a traditional publisher. And that can be really useful because you want to get that credibility. But it also means, you may not own as much of as you think, so be thoughtful. The other thing is just speed at which you can move. If you're an entrepreneur, more than likely you like things that move quickly. And if I say 2 years from now you have a book, you're like, I might not be interested anymore in 2 years. Then you got to think about being a self-published author. You have the speed of that, as well as all the intellectual property rights you can still not have to worry about. And there's somewhere in the middle where you can have someone who acts as your publisher, but you still retain all the rights. That's another way to go. You want it to be professional, be well designed, laid out well, the benefit of editing, the benefit of someone who can help you launch it. And yet you don't want to give away the rights. You still want to retain it. So you have to put the money up front, just like a publisher would give you an advance up front. You could put the money up front on yourself and say, look, I'm going to invest in this book because I believe in it. And I'll get all of the royalties, or a percentage of the royalties, much bigger than the 7% a traditional publisher might give me for each book I sell. And I might get 90% because I had to pay for, out of my pocket for some of it, or however the deal works out. I think in this day and age, it's so much easier to do things on your own that a decade ago or 15 years ago, printers wouldn't even talk to the everyday guy. You had to have a publisher.
Yeah.
But now with print on demand, and even that allows you to have access that you didn't have before. So to me, there's no wrong choice. You just got to think of, is it worth doing this, to have this moniker? Do they have a platform? Basically, entrepreneurs are selling usually their platform, their influence, their audience to a publisher. They're not necessarily buying it because any other reason. They're not just buying books from little guys that have good ideas. They're like, but how are you going to sell it? They want to know you're going to sell it. So there's a little bit of, you're the one they're looking for kind of thing. So I honestly encourage people to think about self-publishing. Realize you can make your book as beautiful. Most books you pick up, you don't know they're self-published anymore because they have an imprint. You just don't know it. And most of us don't know what books they're published by or who they're published by anymore. So I think there's a little bit of like wanting to say I got chosen to write a book.
Yeah. There's a little ego. There's a little ego back there floating around, Yeah. But like I had a buddy that self-published and he got in all the airports. Yeah. And he just worked with some intermediary that got him in all the airports and he was killing it. Yeah. And he didn't need a big publisher to do that. He still controlled everything and it was all good.
I think that's the thing to consider is like, there is work to be done. And that's where you talk about that bandwidth. Do I have enough bandwidth right now to figure all those things out or to manage that part of it? Or do I just want the book? And I think there's a case for both sides, though. I am more of a fan of people owning whatever they create. But there can be a reason why you want to do a traditional book, maybe because they have a bigger reach with distribution. But if you own your audience and you wanting more of your audience, that's a tough question because you just have to know what the deal is. Because sometimes you can think you're getting more than you did. I talked to Kevin Cruz on my show. He's a New York Times bestselling author. And he said, I got it about 15 years ago. It's great because it helps me get on podcasts and land gigs on TV. But he goes, mine self-published book sells way more copies than that New York Times bestselling book ever will. Yeah. Because I got to write the book the way I wanted to write it for my audience and the length I wanted to. And the other one had to follow certain parameters and rules and just wasn't as impactful to my audience. I was like, that's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody's got to make that. And I think that's one of those other things that lingers. Oh, man. You got to write a book. You got to get on the New York Times bestseller. No, you just have to write a freaking book and you just have to put it out there. You don't have to do any of it. You get to do whatever you want. And I love you, Azul, because you help people do what they want with their books. Man, I could talk to you for hours. So I'm going to wrap this up a little bit here and just awesome. Let you tell everybody where they can find you and learn more about what you guys do. Because you guys are the book whisperers of the universe. And and you guys have been I won't say responsible because the writer is responsible, but you have definitely been the reason many great books and for many of my friends made it out there. So tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, you can go to authorswholead.com. That's where we live and have our world. And we also have a podcast, Authors Who Lead, where we interview all these great writers and talk about how did they get there. Ryan Levesque, did you publish this book? Did you write that? I want to know the truth, like behind the scenes of these authors, their book deals, what it was like to write them. So authorswholead.com and also the podcast would be a great place to find us.
All right, guys, that wraps up my conversation with Azul Terronez of authorswholead.com. Let me tell you something. I know Azul personally. He's not just a random guest that got booked on this show. We've known each other for a long time now, and he really is one of the most amazing, good people out there in the online world. I have seen him serve authors and help entrepreneurs get their message out to the world. And I just love everything that he does over at Authors Who Lead. So make sure you check out that podcast. Make sure you check out his website. And if you've got a book that you need help getting out there into the world, you will not find a better book coach than Azul. And if you need help starting, building, launching your online membership business, that's exactly what we do over at flippedlifestyle.com. Inside the Flipped Lifestyle community, we help people start, build, and launch membership sites. Or maybe you already have a membership. We can help you grow it and scale it inside of the community. If you have an idea, if you have a business and you're ready to go out there and create a better future for your family, head over to flippedlifestyle.com/flipyourlife. That's FLIPPED lifestyle.com/flipyourlife, all one word. And you can learn more about our program. We would love to help you get your membership off the ground or take it to the next level so that you can become a membership master too. That's flippedlifestyle.com/flipyourlife to get started today. All right, y'all, that's all the time I have for this week. Until next time, get out there, be consistent, be prolific, be relentless, and do whatever it takes to become a membership master. We'll see you next time.